Hi, I'm Maynard. My sister told me to go fix a vent somewhere else, then kicked me out of Thanksgiving. But that wasn't the worst part. The worst part was realizing it wasn't the first time she'd erased me, just the first time she did it out loud. They took my money, my silence, even my seat at the table, all while smiling for family photos I was never in. Now, I'm left wondering, how long had I been funding the life that didn't include me? And what happens when the quiet one finally pulls the plug? The air smelled like cinnamon candles and roasted turkey when I pulled into the driveway. Callista always went overboard with decor-matching gold napkin rings, ceramic pumpkin centerpieces, name cards even. I had parked behind Beckham's dark sedan, freshly detailed, not a smudge on the finish. Mine was dusty, tools still in the back from an early morning job. I sat there for a moment, hands resting on the steering wheel, watching through the windshield. Laughter filtered from inside. I could already hear Callista's high-pitched giggle, unmistakable. I glanced at the wine bottle on the passenger seat, an Oregon Pinot Noir. ED asked the wine shop to help me pick. It wasn't cheap, but it felt like something a respectable guest would bring. 3 days before Thanksgiving, and here I was, early, ready, dressed in my nicest dark jeans and a soft burgundy sweater, a small silver pendant around my neck. It'd even taken the afternoon off, left my crew with bonuses and clear instructions. No calls today. Today was about family. Or so I kept telling myself. Inside, I was greeted with a mix of glances, some warm, others evaluative. Callista floated across the room in a dress that probably cost more than my monthly rent in trade school. She hugged me quickly, her cheek barely brushing mine. "You made it," she said like I'd RSVP'd to a networking mixer. "Yay," I replied. "Wouldn't miss it." I handed her the wine. She raised an eyebrow. "Nice pick." Then she handed it off to Beckham without a second glance. He offered a half smile, and I caught the faintest flicker of confusion in his eyes, like he wasn't sure who I was. Marisoor mother came out of the kitchen, wiping her hands on a towel. "Maynard, sweetheart, can you help slice the bread?" Of course I could. In the kitchen, I set to work. I knew my way around this counter better than anyone. It helped build it. Literally, financed the remodel 5 years ago when Mom's old countertops were chipping apart. No one mentioned that now. Callista hovered nearby, wine glass in hand, chatting with Beckham and one of his law firm friends. I reached for the bread knife just as she said loudly, "Can someone tell her to go fix a vent or something? This isn't a service call." The room quieted. A few chuckles, then silence. My hand paused over the cutting board. I didn't look up. I didn't have to. I could feel it, Beckham's awkward shifting, the friend's uncomfortable smirk, Mom's lack of response. No defense, no correction, just air thick with implication. In that moment, I became the punchline in my own home. I finished slicing, placed the bread into the warmed basket, and set it gently on the table. Nobody thanked me. Dinner was announced with fanfare. Callista led everyone to the formal dining room, gestures grand, voice bright. I lingered, waiting to see where I'd be seated. My name wasn't on the main table. I checked twice. Maris approached, touching my arm lightly. "Maynard, would you mind letting Mr. Keller sit there?" He is Callista's mentor. "You can grab a plate and join the kids at the island." "The kids?" I asked, not sure I heard right. "The kitchen island," she said gently, as if that softened it. "You don't mind, do you?" I looked around. No one objected. Not Callista, not Beckham, not anyone. So I walked to the kitchen, grabbed a plate, and sat at the end of the counter beside 2 high schoolers and our cousin's moody preteen. From my seat, I could see the dining table. Polished, perfect, full of people dressed in tailored clothing, laughing like a magazine ad. I watched them clink glasses above the very table I had helped pay for during the remodel, a table I was no longer welcome to sit at. I ate quietly. The food tasted fine. It always did. Callista was many things, and an overachieving hostess was one of them. They didn't look over once. After dessert, I helped with dishes without being asked, then slipped away before anyone could offer the obligatory thanks for coming. I climbed into my truck, hands cold despite the heater running. The neighborhood had gone still, porch lights flickering on, kids tucked inside, music playing faintly from another house nearby. I didn't cry. I didn't scream. I didn't text anyone to say what happened. I just sat there, still, because silence was something I had learned to wear like a second skin. And tonight, it fit too well. I didn't drive off right away. I sat there in the truck with the engine running, staring out at the house where everyone I was supposed to matter to had already moved on without me. The lights inside glowed warm and gold, shadows flickering as people passed by the windows. I could hear faint echoes of laughter when the wind shifted just right. They'd moved on to dessert, maybe coffee, maybe toasts. I was gone, and not one person had noticed. I didn't text anyone to say goodbye. No one reached out to ask if I was okay or where I'd gone. For all they knew, I could have been in a ditch somewhere. Or maybe they knew exactly where I was, right outside, but didn't think I was worth the trouble. My phone buzzed. For a second, I thought maybe, just maybe, it was Maris, or even Callista. Maybe someone had come to their senses. It was Callista. I opened the message and read it once, then again. Next time, try not to look like HVAC. Kinda messed up the vibe. There was no emoji, no sarcasm tag. Just those words, short, clean, cruel. I didn't reply. I didn't delete it either. I just stared at the screen, letting the glow wash over my face. It felt like something inside me had shifted, but not broken. More like it rearranged itself, like a bridge giving way after too many years of unspoken weight. Instead of crying, I turned on the radio. Static. I flipped through stations until I landed on a classical piece I didn't recognize. Violins, maybe. Something slow and sweeping. I let it play in the background while I opened Instagram. I shouldn't have, but I did. Callista had already posted a full photo carousel. The caption read, "Grateful for every person at this table. Family is everything." Slide 1. Callista and Beckham, arms linked, both glowing like a Macy's window. Slide 2. Maris at the head of the table, smiling beside Mr. Keller. Slide 3, the group shot, the whole family apparently. Except I wasn't in it. I blinked. I remembered posing for that picture. I remembered standing between Aunt Val and my cousin Lenny. I remembered smiling, fake but full, because that's what you do for a family photo. And yet, here I was, scrolling through evidence that I hadn't existed. Either they'd retaken it after I left, or they'd cropped me out. Either way, the message was loud and clear. The comments rolled in. Such a beautiful family. Goals. Everyone looks so happy. I closed the app, my thumb shaking slightly, then opened the camera roll on my phone. I searched Thanksgiving. Last year, the year before. There were photos, plenty of them. Callista cutting pies, Beckham holding wine glasses, Maris arranging napkins like flower petals. But in all those photos, one thing stayed the same. I was always behind the camera, never in front of it. A few had my hand in the corner, my wrist maybe, the back of my head once. But not my face, not me. I remembered helping host last year's dinner because Callista was swamped with finals. I remembered making the cranberry sauce from scratch, the one Dad used to love. He wasn't around anymore, but I'd done it anyway, for tradition, for the illusion of mattering, and not one image existed to prove it ever been there. I scrolled back further, hoping to disprove the narrative building in my head. I wanted to find just one picture, one where I was laughing, or holding a plate, or standing in the background. But year after year, all I found were gaps. Space where I should have been. This wasn't new. What was new was that I saw it now, for what it was. Not an oversight, not a coincidence. It was a pattern, a decision. They didn't want to remember me, and deep down, I had stopped asking them to. I turned off my phone and stared at the black screen. My own reflection looked back at me, tired and unsmiling. No foundation, no gloss, just me. The version they didn't want seated at the table or shown to the world. I rolled down the window and let the air in. It was sharp, with that crisp, pine needle edge that only Idaho nights seem to carry in late November. It smelled like smoke and stars, and something I couldn't name. I wasn't just missing from the photo. I was never meant to be in the frame at all. The morning light in Boise has a strange way of feeling honest, like it's not going to sugarcoat anything for you. I woke to it seeping through the blinds, slanting across the cracked windowsill in my apartment above the shop. The heater clicked on with a grumble. It didn't help the cold that had settled in me overnight. My phone was face down on the nightstand, but I already knew what it'd see. Still, I picked it up. No missed calls, no texts, no one asking where I went. No one even pretending to notice I had left mid-meal and vanished into the night. I made coffee without really tasting it. My fingers moved through muscle memory filter, scoop, water, press, but my thoughts were somewhere else. I checked my email, mostly invoices and spam. Then I glanced at the whiteboard hanging above my small kitchen table. It listed all the weekend appointments I had personally rearranged so I could be free for Thanksgiving. And for what? I flipped open my laptop. I wasn't sure why. Just something to do while the coffee cooled. The screen blinked to life, and with it came a memory from the night before, the conversation that had slipped under my skin like a splinter. Callista's voice, all polished and poised. A guest had asked how she managed to get through law school without debt. She smiled and said, "My parents are angels. Always made sure I had what I needed." That moment hadn't hit me then, not fully. I had been too focused on keeping my hands from trembling while I carried dishes. But now, in the quiet of my apartment, it landed. They erased me. Even in their praise, I didn't exist. All those payments I had made, the textbooks, the housing deposits, the semester fees, all slipped neatly into some invisible drawer labeled parental support. And she let them, smiled through it. Let people believe the story she thought was prettier. I stood, suddenly needing air. I opened the window. The city below was just waking up. The muffled sounds of trucks, a dog barking somewhere down the alley. Leaning against the windowsill, I thought about the dress, the one I wore to dinner. It had belonged to our grandmother. A soft floral pattern, old-fashioned but meaningful. It was something she wore every Thanksgiving. I'd kept it for years, only pulling it out for special family gatherings. I remembered walking into the kitchen, and Callista whispering to Maris, just loud enough for me to hear, "Next time, maybe she shouldn't wear upholstery." They laughed. I pretended not to hear. But I did. I always do. I pulled the dress from the laundry bag hanging on the bathroom door. The fabric still carried the faint scent of roasted rosemary and clove. I sat on the edge of the bed and laid it across my lap. It felt heavier than I remembered. Not physically, but in memory. It wasn't just a dress. It was a legacy they didn't want me to be part of. I ran my fingers along the seam that I had mended last year by hand. That little tear under the sleeve, where the stitching had come loose after decades of use. I had fixed it, delicately, with care. Just like I had tried to fix everything else in that family, but no one remembered that part. I placed the dress back in its garment bag and zipped it shut. My phone lit up again, not with a message, but with a photo notification. Another post from Callista. A boomerang of her and Beckham clinking glasses, captioned, "Nothing like family." Family! I stared at that word until it blurred. Scrolling back through her timeline, I noticed how I'd never been tagged. Not in birthdays, not in holidays. Not even in the post she made last year after I paid her tuition in full for spring semester. She'd posted a picture of her holding a Starbucks cup, captioned, "Cheers to working hard and making things happen." I was a ghost in my own generosity. Looking back now, the signs were everywhere. The way she dodged questions about where her support came from. How she never introduced me to people unless forced. When she did, it was always vague. "This is my sister," with a tone that suggested the word could mean anything. I had let it slide. Every time. Told myself it wasn't worth making a scene, that I wasn't doing any of this for credit. But maybe I should have asked why credit was such a dirty word only when it was about me. I set my phone down and reached for a notepad on my counter. Scribbled 3 words at the top. Start writing back. It wasn't just hurt anymore. It was recognition. If they could build a perfect story without me, then maybe I was never meant to be in their ending. I didn't send the letter, but I made one change they couldn't ignore. Sunday afternoons in Boise moved slower than the rest of the week. The streets had a hush to them, like even the concrete needed a breather. I met Lydia at the corner cafe, the one with those wobbly patio chairs and the smell of burnt espresso trapped in the wood. She was already seated with her latte, flipping through something on her phone when I arrived. We hugged in that awkward shoulder tap way people do when they've grown distant, but haven't admitted it. I sat across from her, wrapping my fingers around the warm ceramic mug I'd ordered more out of habit than desire. We talked about nothing first. The weather, work, a recall on some car part her husband was annoyed about. Then, like a train switching tracks, she looked up and said, "Callista's really stressed, Del. You know how she gets with pressure. It probably wasn't personal." I stirred my coffee slowly. It wasn't pressure that made her lie. Lydia didn't answer. She just sighed, then tapped her screen and turned it toward me. "Did you see the toast?" The video played without sound at first, and that was almost enough. Callista stood at the head of the dining table like it was a podium, her glass raised, her face glowing with self-certainty. Lydia turned the sound on. "I just want to thank everyone who made this dinner possible. And a special shout out to my little sister, our behind-the-scenes logistics queen, always making things flow. No name, no camera pan, no gesture in my direction. I wasn't family, I was function." "She meant well," Lydia said softly. "You know she loves you." "Do I?" I took a slow sip and set my cup down. Because what I saw was a woman proud to edit me out of her own fairy tale. Lydia didn't argue. Maybe she wanted to. Maybe she just didn't know how. We parted with a tight smile and empty words. Let's do this again sometime. We both knew we wouldn't. Later, at the supply store, I ran into Beckham. I'd come for couplings and vent sealant, but found him near the checkout with a box of light bulbs and some organic oat milk. He recognized me right away and waved. "Hey," he said with that lawyer charm smile. "Still doing the vents for your mom's place? They said you're like the go-to maintenance gal." I blinked once. That smile didn't fade. "No," I replied calmly, evenly. "I own an HVAC business. I don't do vents. I manage a full-service team and have a contract with the city on top of residential work." "Oh, right. I didn't mean anything by it." "I know," I said, and let the words hang there. I didn't need to explain the difference between a sister and a servant. He wouldn't get it. He wasn't supposed to. They knew who I was, I thought, walking out the door with my materials in hand. They just didn't want that version of me in the room. Back at home, I dropped the parts on the kitchen counter and sat at my desk. The laptop opened with a whisper. I hadn't planned on writing anything, but the words started before I could stop them. "Dear Callista, it's easy to forget who keeps the machine running when you've only ever been handed the keys. I've spent years helping you without asking for thanks, without making a scene, without needing a spotlight. But I won't stay invisible while you rewrite history. If you keep removing me from your narrative, I will remove my support from yours." I stared at the cursor blinking at the bottom of the draft. The screen glowed soft against the darkening sky outside. I read the message once, twice. Then I clicked save. Not send. Not yet. But it sat there. A digital boundary line. A mirror waiting to be held up. And in that silence between restraint and action, I found something I hadn't felt in a long time. Control. I didn't send the letter, but I made one change they couldn't ignore. It was nearly midnight when I sat down at my kitchen table, the hum of the fridge and the ticking of the wall clock my only company. The draft I'd saved from yesterday glowed on the screen, a message still unsent, just a warning written in plain type. But sometimes, words weren't the weapon. Action was. I logged into the university's payment portal. My fingers moved slowly, deliberately. Username, password, 2-step verification. Then the dashboard loaded. Her name stared back at me. Callista Maurice Callahan, listed under sponsored accounts. My account, my money, my decision. The cursor hovered over the payment method. There was a small gray link next to it. Remove payer. I clicked it. The page blinked. Are you sure? It asked. Yes. My heart didn't race. There was no dramatic exhale, just a quiet internal shift, like a door finally closing on a drafty hallway that had always stayed just a little too cold. I didn't celebrate. I didn't even smile. Instead, I stood, walked over to the stove, and made myself a mug of mint tea. Something to mark the moment soft, clean, forgettable to anyone else. But to me, it felt like reclaiming oxygen. It wasn't revenge. I was just done. Back at my laptop, I minimized the payment portal and opened an old folder I hadn't touched in weeks, voice memos. I'd used it to record meetings, contractor walkthroughs, client quotes, practical stuff. But one file sat in there with a vague title, Kitchen Thursday. I didn't even remember hitting record. I clicked play. Callista's voice came through first, crisp and careless. Maynard's just HVAS. I told Mom she doesn't fit the crowd this year. Someone laughed in the background. Maybe Maris, maybe not. That was all it took. I didn't pause it. I didn't play it again. I just sat back, let the words soak through. My jaw didn't clench. My eyes didn't sting. It wasn't the worst thing she'd ever said. But hearing it out loud, not imagined, not implied, was a confirmation. A receipt. I renamed the file, Proof.mp3. Then I forwarded it to one person. No subject line, no message, just the file, Maris. I knew she would listen to it. She always said she hated gossip, but never turned down a piece of context. I waited less than an hour. The phone rang. Her name lit up on the screen, same as it had every time she'd called me to ask for a favor, a ride, a check written without questions. This time, I let it go to voicemail. It rang again. And again. I picked it up on the fourth try. Didn't say hello, just waited. Maris' voice came sharp, already wound up. Maynard, what the hell is this? You listened, I said evenly. What do you want me to do with this? She was venting. She didn't mean it. She meant every word, I replied. She's your sister. She's your daughter, I corrected, because at that moment, I wasn't sure I still wanted to claim the title. Maris huffed. This isn't how family handles things. No, I agreed. This is how people who've been used without acknowledgement finally stop being used. I hung up. She didn't call back. The silence that followed wasn't empty, it was earned. It wasn't lonely, it was mine. I sat back, pulled the tea to my lips. Lukewarm now, but still familiar. The apartment was quiet again, humming in low tones, a comfort I'd built for myself. Sometimes the loudest decision is made in a whisper, or a click, and this one echoed louder than anything I could have screamed. They thought it'd disappear quietly. What they didn't expect was it'd take the foundation with me. Tuesday crept in with that thick, low Idaho scythe kind that makes everything feel like it's about to break. I showed up at the office an hour earlier than usual. Not because there was anything urgent, just because silence at home had started sounding more like accusation than peace. Work, at least, had rules. Physics. Process. You tighten the bolt. The machine works. You find the leak. You fix it. Nothing petty. Nothing performative. I was elbow deep in a stack of invoices when Taylor, my youngest technician smart, observant, kind stood awkwardly in the doorway. She hesitated, chewing on her bottom lip, holding her phone like it was radioactive. I know this isn't really my business, she said gently. But have you seen Callista's story? My jaw tightened, but I nodded. Show me. She handed over her phone with care, like she was passing me a wound I'd have to dress myself. And there it was, Callista's signature drama. Black background, white bold font. Some people love money more than family. Sad, no tags, no names, just poison, thinly veiled. But I didn't need a name. I knew who she meant. And so did everyone else in her curated little world. The comments felt like being slapped in a room full of people who pretended not to notice. You deserve better. You don't need that kind of negativity in your life. Cut the snakes out, Queen. I handed the phone back without flinching. They're not seeing the whole story, I said quietly. Taylor nodded and slipped away, clearly uncomfortable. I didn't blame her. I stayed the rest of the workday out of obligation, finishing every mundane task like I was ticking boxes off a goodbye list. Then I drove home in silence, not even the hum of the radio to distract me. Just the sound of my own clarity, growing louder with every passing block. At home, I opened Instagram not because I cared, but because I knew I had to know. I had to see what story they were building now. Maris had posted a warm-toned photo of her spotless kitchen white counters, polished copper fixtures, her curated life in full display. The caption? Family first. Always. Callista followed with an old photo from her college graduation, posed like she had achieved it with nothing but divine light and hard work. Built by grace, not bitterness. Comments. Disabled. Of course. They weren't telling lies. Not directly. They were telling half-truths designed to paint me out of the frame again, but I didn't reply. I didn't clap back. Instead, I walked over to the kitchen counter where a plain cream-colored envelope sat waiting. I'd bought it earlier that morning from the tiny stationery shop with hand-labeled drawers and bell chimes on the door. It was simple, quiet, like I had been all these years. Inside, I slid a check made out for $0 and a small note card with one single line. This is the last check you'll ever cash from me. My handwriting, my calm, my decision. I sealed the envelope, tucked it into a certified mailer, and drove it to the post office after dark. The fluorescent lights buzzed softly. The clerk didn't even glance up when she stamped the package. It felt right. Back home, I didn't spiral. I got to work. I opened my laptop and started the audit knot of my finances, but of every tie I'd quietly maintained, every convenience I'd funded, every bill with my name, quietly paying for someone else's comfort. Callista's rent deposit? Terminated. Her utilities? Canceled. The Spotify family plan? Trimmed to an Amy. Apple Cloud storage? Revoked. Phone upgrades they'd long forgotten I paid for? Disconnected. I wasn't angry, I was awake. For years, they hadn't needed me. They needed the version of me who didn't ask questions, who footed the bills, who bit her tongue at Thanksgiving and smiled through every jab. But I wasn't that woman anymore. By midnight, I had unraveled every cord that tied me to them. Quietly, cleanly. I turned off my phone and sat on the edge of my bed. There was no music, no noise, just stillness, and for once, it wasn't heavy. And then the phone lit up. Maris. Once, twice, 3 times. I didn't answer. Let it ring until it stopped. She didn't leave a voicemail. I opened my text and typed a sentence. Still think I'm the problem? Sent. No ... No reply. And still no ache. Because this wasn't revenge. It was revelation. I didn't torch the bridge. I just stopped rebuilding it alone. And as I turned the phone over and clicked off the lamp, I finally felt something that had eluded me for years, peace. If they wanted a perfect story, I was finally ready to write the ending they never planned for and never saw coming. It was a gray Thursday morning, the kind where nothing feels urgent, but everything weighs a little heavier. I was at the front desk of the shop, sliding filter boxes onto shelves, double-checking invoice labels, and trying to keep my mind quiet. The scent of metal, paper, and coffee mixed in the air, grounding me in the ordinary. Then my phone buzzed. It was a text from Isolde. We hadn't not really talked since before Thanksgiving, and even then, it had only been about recipes, links to discount candles, a dumb meme about dishwashing gloves. Things people send when they don't know how to say, I saw what they did to you, and I didn't stop them. The message was short. You didn't have to be so dramatic, you know. Callista's just trying her best. No emojis, no question, no warmth. Just a flat line of condescension disguised as concern. I read it again. Then once more, slower this time. It wasn't just the words. It was the absence of effort. The kind of message that's written by someone more interested in smoothing over discomfort than understanding pain. I didn't reply. But in my head, something clear and bitter surfaced. When silence is easier than defending you, they'll let you burn. I scrolled up through our old thread. There was a picture of her haircut from September, one I had complimented with too much enthusiasm. A snapshot I'd sent her from my shop's opening day, the ribbon, the flowers, my tired smile. And then a voice memo, scratchy but sincere. "You're the rock in my life, Maynard. The steady one. Don't ever change." Funny how people always say that right before they do. I stared at that message until it meant nothing. Then I deleted the thread. No ceremony, no guilt, just space cleared. Like brushing off crumbs from a table you were never really invited to sit at. Around noon, Rowena stopped by. She didn't knock, just walked in like she always did, eyes scanning the room like she could sense something brewing. In one hand, she carried a beat-up red toolbox that had definitely seen better decades. In the other, a small USB drive shaped like a cartoon camera. "From my niece," she said. "She's 9. Thinks she's Spielberg. Recorded the whole dinner from under the table." I raised an eyebrow. "She likes spy movies," Rowena added with a smirk. "You might want to watch it." And that was it. No backstory, no persuasion. She placed the drive on the counter, patted the toolbox like it was a dog, and left. I waited until the shop emptied out. Phones muted. Doors locked. Then I plugged the drive into my laptop, half expecting it to be silly or corrupted, or maybe nothing at all. There were several clips, all time-stamped and slightly shaky, but one stood out. It was labeled, "Thanksgiving Final." Kids always name things like it's the definitive version. No second takes, just one truth, captured. I clicked it open. The video began in chaos, shoes scraping tile, the rustle of napkins, the clinking of cutlery and glasses. The camera was angled upward from beneath the dining table, framed between chair legs and dangling linen. At first, it was just sound. Voices, forks, laughter. Then a sudden tilt brought Callista into view. She was by the dessert table, half a tart in hand, one elbow resting against a chair back like she owned the moment. And then she said it. "I told Mom Maynard's basically staff. I mean, HVAC doesn't photograph well." She laughed. So did the others. Not nervously, not politely, but with the easy cruelty of people who think the person they're mocking won't ever hear them. But I did. I didn't pause. Didn't replay. I just stared. Then minimized the window, copied the file to my desktop, and renamed it. Unedited familyvalues.mp4. There it was, unedited, unfiltered, undeniable. Not a rumor, not a misinterpretation. Just their truth, caught from a low angle they never saw coming. I sat back, the hum of the HVAC unit overhead, whispering like a cruel reminder. My coffee had gone cold, but I didn't move. I didn't text Rowena. I didn't blast it on social media. I didn't even tell a soul, not yet. Instead, I spent the rest of the afternoon tidying things no one would see. Backing up folders, labeling receipts, preparing. Because this wasn't about revenge not yet. This was about strategy, the kind of quiet they underestimated, the stillness before the truth walks in. And meanwhile, on the other side of the screen, they kept performing grief and sisterhood like it was a shared Instagram account. Callista had posted a candlelit picture of her and Beckham with a caption, "Some people just walk away, and that's okay." Maris had commented underneath, "God gives you what you need, not what you want." Polished, pious, predictable, fine. Let them keep their manicured captions and filtered devotionals, their curated sadness, their borrowed grace. Because now I had the one thing they couldn't crop, a mirror they couldn't edit. And I hadn't even pressed play on the next chapter yet. Friday morning started like any other, until the shop's mail slot clanked with the sound of something thick sliding through. I glanced up from the counter, where my coffee had just turned drinkable. No return address. Just a cream-colored envelope with a discreet corporate logo stamped in the upper corner. It wasn't a bill. It wasn't personal. It was a student loan provider. One I'd never dealt with, not for myself anyway. I slit the envelope open with the edge of a letter opener, steam rising from my mug as I flipped through the packet. Dense legalese, printed tables, payment terms. Then, midway through the third page, I saw my name. Listed as a cosigner. Borrower, Callista Maris Callahan. Date, 2 years ago. My eyes didn't widen, my hands didn't shake, but something inside me twisted, like I'd been holding onto the edge of a dock and someone kicked me in the ribs. I didn't remember signing anything, not for that. Not then. But there it was, my name, clear as day, digitally stamped onto a signature line I never touched. A forged signature. Crisp, believable, almost smug. They hadn't just borrowed my help. They stole my name and built an entire future out of it. I didn't call her. I didn't even let myself rehearse the conversation. What could she possibly say? That it was a misunderstanding? That I always meant well and would have said yes if she had asked. I didn't need soft lies in a sweet tone. I needed proof. So I spent the rest of the morning in quiet focus. Digging, scanning, printing. Every bank statement, every tuition receipt, every emailed PDF Callista had asked me to look over real quick. One, buried in a cluttered desktop folder from 2021, made me stop cold. It was a financial disclosure form, filed with her university, claiming she was a first-generation student, self-funded, no support from family. A lie. Because I was the support, and I had the loan statement to prove it. Out of habit, I checked the scholarship's official site, the one Callista had gushed over during her acceptance dinner. The guidelines were clear. Applicants must demonstrate financial independence, no significant family assistance. So not only had she lied to me, she'd lied to them. And she'd benefited from it all publicly, loudly, proudly. Scholarships, spotlights. Self-made success posts captioned with emojis and Bible verses. I gathered everything, the forged loan documents, the false financial declarations, the printout from the Scholarship Foundation, and a video Rowena's niece had casually sent me last month, one I hadn't thought much of until now. In it, Callista bragged, almost jokingly, "Honestly, all you need is a good story. They eat that up." I replayed it twice, then labeled the folder. Scholarship Integrity Breach. The meeting wasn't dramatic. No courtroom, no gasp. Just a plain, carpeted office with fluorescent lighting and a tired-looking woman behind a desk. I sat across from her, folder in hand. "I'm not here to destroy her," I said as I passed the file across the table. "But I believe you deserve to know where your investment really went." She didn't rush. She didn't ask questions. She just started reading, eyes narrowing with every page. After a while, she looked up and asked, "Would you like to be informed as this proceeds?" I shook my head. "No, I just wanted the truth to land where it belongs." And that was it. I stood, walked out, and didn't look back. That night, the calls started. My phone buzzed during dinner, 3 missed calls in a row. One from Callista, one from Maris, one from Beckham. I didn't answer, not out of anger, just clarity. I'd said what needed to be said, without speaking a word to them. Instead, I curled up on the couch, laundry half folded beside me, and opened my laptop. A local legal forum I followed posted an update. Scholarship status on temporary hold pending review of submitted financial documents. No names, no specifics, but the timing couldn't have been clearer. The comments started rolling in. Why do people always ruin a good thing with lies? Fraud should be prosecuted like theft. Because it is. Another rags to riches story built on someone else's wallet. I didn't comment, didn't like, didn't repost. I just watched. And for once, the silence didn't feel like a hole or a void or an absence. It felt right. Like a door closing softly behind me. Not slamming, not breaking, just closing. No fireworks, no shouting matches, no scenes worthy of reality TV. Just a slow unraveling, a quiet undoing, a house of cards collapsing under its own arrogance. I pulled a blanket over my lap, letting the last light fade through the windows. The news played in the background, something about thunderstorms and traffic delays. But all I heard was calm. The weight was still there, but it had shifted. Moved to a place I didn't have to carry anymore. Because I didn't start the fire. I just stopped shielding them from the spark. You can lose everything and still not feel free unless you choose to walk away from what broke you. 2 weeks had passed since the file was handed off to the scholarship board. Nothing loud had happened, no press conference, no angry calls to my office from strangers. But Boise has its own quiet way of letting things unravel. The news made it into the sidebar of a regional legal blog. Scholarship revoked following review of eligibility. No names, no photos. But I didn't need the headline to tell me who they meant. I listened to Maris's voicemail once. "You didn't have to go this far." That was all she said. "No hello, no, we need to talk." Just those words, clipped and bitter, like a lid snapping closed on a Tupperware she thought could contain me. I deleted it. Beckham's message came in that evening. Longer, more careful. I didn't know. "I'm ending things with Callista. We can't build a future on a lie." That one I didn't delete. I didn't save it either. The next day, I signed the lease on a second work van used, but solid. I'd been watching it sit at the dealership for a week, waiting for a reason to give myself permission. This was it. I handed over the down payment with a calm I hadn't felt in months. No champagne, no announcement, just action. The new space had been eyeing smaller than I wanted, but with good lighting and a back room, I could turn into a parts inventory station. I took it. Quietly. The lease signed in the same careful pen I'd used on so many checks for them. Progress didn't need applause. It just needed movement. I sent Rowena a handwritten card. Some people show up without needing an invitation. Her reply came a few days later in a small package. A white ceramic mug with block letters. Built, not born. I didn't cry. But I held it for a long time before putting it on the shelf in my new office. A few days before Christmas, Callista texted, "You ruined my life." I didn't open it. I deleted it before the preview finished loading. Then I opened my window. The air was cold, snow gently trailing from the gray sky. Boise winter always made the city feel like it belonged to ghosts. I took a breath and reached into the drawer where Id kept the recording, the one of her voice at Thanksgiving, laughing, calling me staff. I played it one last time. Not because I was angry, not for validation, just to remember. And then I deleted that too. I didn't need evidence anymore. Christmas Eve came. A white envelope slid into my mailbox. The handwriting was Maris. "We miss you, let's talk." I didn't block the number, but I didn't respond. Forgiveness wasn't the point. Distance was. I no longer waited to be chosen. I chose myself. The morning after Christmas, I sat in my new office. The heater rumbled steadily. The windows let in thin, honest light. My phone was turned off. No buzzes, no interruptions. On my desk sat the mug Rowena gave me, and next to it, a folded card from my lead technician, handwritten in simple blue ink, to the one who built her own seat at the table.